Name is Karina Arango, and the topic that I chose was restorative justice and reducing recidivism and promoting community healing. The reason why I chose this topic is because for a living, I work with incarcerated men and women, primarily men that are in the jail system. I work at a county level. What I do with them is I work with them in order for them to get education, like college credits. We essentially give them the basic courses that everybody takes when they're in college, like their English, their writing, their speech, and their math. So that's what I do on a day-to-day basis with them. Um, and again, the topic mainly deals with what I deal with specifically in the correctional setting. So restorative justice and reducing the whole recidivism rate by promoting healing within the community is important because it allows, I guess, for second chances, sometimes third, fourth, and fifth chances, depending on what the situation is. And doing the research that I did, I came across a lot of factors that played into the role as to why men and women of a certain ethnicity fall into this vicious cycle of being incarcerated. And it's mainly African American and Hispanics that are high up there in that type of situation. I see this daily with what I do for a living. I mainly see Hispanics and African American men and women. Most are men. Women, it's a few, but it's mostly men that we see incarcerated, and it's usually for low level offenses like drug charges, a burglary, assault charges. Um, I do deal with men that have like that are maximum security, that have like murder charges and things of that nature. But in speaking to them, I've come to understand that like my review also showed, it all stems from like your childhood, um parental involvement, or where you grew up. It doesn't mean that because you grew up with a single parent or no parents, or grew up in the middle of like the worst area, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to evolve into somebody who is going to be committing crimes left and right. However, your chances of actually going down the wrong path is higher than that of someone who grew up in a suburban area with both parents being present and going to the best schools. Again, there's many people who have experience growing up in urban areas, whether it be the projects, whether it be anywhere that's very urban and is considered dangerous. I'm originally from New Jersey, from Hudson County. So this area is very diverse. Has its good sides and its bad sides. So I'm sure throughout the rest of the US there's places like that. So what people fail to realize is that we have these individuals that are constantly in and out of jail because of the setting that they're in. It's hard, based on the research that I was doing, it's hard to actually reduce this type of situation from continuously occurring because the lack, I guess, of community involvement. And when I say that, I mean community wanting to help those men and women who have had a mistake or have done some form of a crime, whether it be big or small. Again, there's many crimes that are, I guess, you can't forgive them because of what the crime is. But there is other instances where it's like minor crimes and individuals are placed in a correctional setting for such a long time over something so small. So if we're able to have the community come together and have these individuals assist programs, get the help that they need, these recidivism rates start to decrease. However, with that being said, it takes kind of like a whole village to be on board with this. Plus, it takes money. A lot of taxpayers aren't going to want to invest in these type of things like programs, drug rehab, or any of that type of service. However, if you kind of look at the bigger picture, it's more costly to pay for an inmate every day than to actually give them the treatment that he or she may need. But everybody's situation is different. But in the research that I was doing, it all spoke pretty much about the same thing. The environment plays a humongous role in the success of somebody. If you put someone who has a drug habit in jail or prison for an extended amount of time, they come home. Keep in mind that when they're in jail or prison, they are relatively clean. They're on Suboxone or some type of a medication to curb that desire to want to take drugs. So they're relatively clean. But then if they're released and they come back into society, into the same place that they were originally at that caused them to end up in jail or prison, the chances of them falling back into that same vicious cycle of drugs and alcohol or any type of abuse, of narcotic abuse, is bigger than them being released into like a rehabilitation program. There are plenty of rehabilitation programs offered, that allow for these individuals to successfully go through the motions and actually complete this program. However, that takes money, it takes resources, it takes people that actually want to do it, and it takes the person who's going through the program being held accountable and actually wanting to change his or her life. The research also spoke about the lack of community involvement. Um, there's politics and everything. That's just the, I guess, the lay of the land at this point. So with no community involvement, and I don't mean like your neighbors, I mean more so like your mayor, your state senator, things of that nature. If there is no one at a higher ranking that is able to help out and actually say like, hey, this is what we need, as opposed to putting people in jail for an extended amount of time, these rates are going to increase. Sadly, the rates for African Americans and Hispanics are much higher than any other race. Again, what I do for a living, I see it firsthand. It's mainly African Americans and Hispanics that I deal with. And these are all young men. I think the oldest individual I've had was in his 50s, and he's been in it, in and out. So again, his that's like what he knows. It's his life, in and out, in and out. But then I have young men that are like 18, 19, and their first offense, they really like knock it out of the park. That it lands them like 10 plus years in a prison or a federal facility, or some of them are facing life. I had one that was facing life and he was all of 22. And it's because of the way that they grew up, their environment. So I'm a firm believer that if we unite and help out these individuals, it reduces these rates. It also benefits those that pay taxes, like me and you. Um, our money goes towards keeping these people caged up. Again, firm believer that some people do deserve to be where they're at because of how heinous their crime was. But then there's others that just need some sort of mental health services, some sort of rehabilitation service, something that's going to help them see the light at the end of the tunnel, as opposed to seeing nothing at the end of the tunnel. So, with community involvement, with actually assisting and having people that actually want to help these individuals, I'm sure that the as time progresses, the recidivism rate will decrease. And it'll allow these individuals an opportunity to actually become better, actually be contributing factors to society, as opposed to being individuals who tarnish society per se. I hope you all enjoy my topic. I really enjoyed doing the research on it. Anything that has to do with criminal justice is very near and dear to me because of what I do for a living and for personal matters. But yeah, again, my name is Karina Arango, and it was a pleasure.